Hey everyone. So it's another day on Twitter, which means that there's another economist with tens of thousands of followers talking completely out of their ass about the history of money, and throwing a tantrum when you disagree with them even a little bit. Economists are very confused. I could talk a lot about this, but I really want to get into the details. So the good news for you is that you're getting part two of my medieval monetary theory series. This is probably the last one I have planned for now because you'll by the end of this video, we'll have sketched kind of the system to the limits of my knowledge, and anything beyond that is a topic for further research. So there's definitely a lot more to say than what I'm going to say here, but I'm going to kind of finish sketching the most important aspects of the the medieval and early modern monetary systems. And so this is prompted by somebody on Twitter getting very upset about the history of precious metal coins, right? Gold and silver coins, because the economists, the ones who want to resist kind of a gold bug austerity politics, which is politics that says, only gold and silver should be money, and paper money is an abomination, et cetera, and so forth. So and this is a view that really kind of is consonance. It kind of agrees with the kind of textbook myth about money that has been attacked by a lot of different people in the last little while. David Graeber, MMT, and me, among others. So this myth that you find in the textbook is falling apart, and it's kind of connected to this gold bug ideology, and so people are trying to push back against it by pointing out, that gold and silver coins are not the only relevant monetary phenomena for in the history of money. And this is certainly true, but it's really easy to overemphasize this point. And kind of where this has gone is with people trying to wish away gold and silver coins, like from monetary history at all, to say that there's really nothing interesting about precious metal coinage as such. That it really is just a credit instrument and all this kind of stuff. So I write about this in my dissertation, which you should check out. You can read it. It's called "The Difference That Money Makes." I was still working on it in my last video. So I've written 400 pages about my views about all of this. But I want to present for you today, kind of in response to the people who say there's nothing interesting to know about gold and silver coins, they've never really been important for monetary systems. This is not true, and we actually need to understand gold and silver coins in order to understand the way that money markets and credit instruments work in these periods, because ultimately it's the coin of the realm in which contracts are denominated and legally enforced, and this matters for all kinds of reasons. So I could diagnose the sort of ideological swamp that these people are caught in fighting with themselves about the history of money. But what I want to do right now is actually just show you what there is that's interesting about the mint, right? And it's what's ironic is that part of this new view in economics is that institutions matter, right? For legal and political institutions matter for creating money, but they really don't want to think about one of the main institutions, which is the mint. And so last time we talked about one of the important institutions of the monetary system, which was the exchange. And in that discussion, I kind of said in passing that the profit of the exchange bankers is really an arbitrage on seigniorage. And that's what I want to show you today. So I'm going to show you how the mint and the mint policy, which we can't understand, as you'll see, without understanding that gold and silver coins. It matters that they're made of gold and silver. The mint policy is very intimately related to the credit market, and so really when we look at the history of numismatics, of coins, and we're asking, okay, why do rulers and other policymakers change the amount of metal in the coin? Well, what they're doing, if you really understand this stuff, is that they're responding to things that are happening in credit markets, the markets and bills of exchange, and they're responding to this in various ways. And so try to understand why okay, an enhancement or a debasement of coins might be an intervention into credit markets, we have to understand, what the mint is doing. And there's some bad and wrong accounts of this floating around, and so I'm gonna rectify that. And by the end of the video, it's gonna get a little technical here. It might take me a while to work through this material, but by the end of the video, what I hope you're gonna kind of see is that the policy of the mint is not unlike the policy of modern central banks. I mean, it's very different, but it is similar in that it's about the management of spreads. Okay, the central bank is really concerned with defining spreads within which the money market can move, and conflicts between the market and monetary institutions happens when the market puts pressure on the spread, and the question is, what happens then, and as I'm going to try to show you, is the same with the mint. So with that, let's get into the interesting stuff here. So again, this is my Patreon. So if you appreciate, it took me like 8 hours today to make this video. So if you appreciate the work that I do, please throw me some money so I can pay my bills. So let's begin with the account of Christine Desan. So Christine Desan, supposedly not an MMT or a modern monetary theorist, really has substantially similar views as them, and is probably the most cited and most authoritative source for the neo-chartalist story about money when it comes to kind of medieval and early modern periods. And there are some virtues of this book, but there is a serious problem in the way that Christine Desan describes the policy of the mint. So let's look at what she says here. In early medieval England, rulers chose to make the basic unit of account, the penny, out of silver. That choice gave silver a price. For example, a weighed pound of silver of specified fineness might be exchanged for 230 pennies at the mint. The mint price received when an individual took that amount of bullion in to be coined. The mint made perhaps 242 pennies out of the bullion, kept 12 for the moneyer and the king, and returned the remainder, i.e. 230 pennies. Okay, so what Desan is saying here is that the mint is buying silver at the window. So it's buying silver by weight, and it's taking this silver and coining it into pennies. Now, a monetary pound. Okay, there's 2 pounds, and we have to keep that. Well, there's more than 2, but we'll simplify by saying there's 2 pounds. There's 1 pound, which is a weight pound, and this, as we'll see in a second, this is the Tower pound. In the period that we're looking at, it changes. It's a leaf turn. It's a different pound later, but it doesn't really matter. Is 5,400 grains. So the grain is a unit of weight in which moneyers in this period actually measured. So I'm gonna do everything in grains, because translating to grams actually makes things more confusing. It's better if it's about 0.68 grams or something like that. So the Tower pound is 5,400 grains, and that's a weight unit. But there's also a pound sterling. Okay, so a pound sterling is a monetary unit of account. Now, once upon a time, and this Desan says some slightly misleading things about this. Once upon a time, these pounds were the same. A pound of pennies just meant a pound. This is the original standard, or at least we can put an asterisk on that, but there's originally a very close correlation between these two things. Over time, they diverge, and they diverge because a pound is a pound. Okay, a Tower pound is 5,400 grains, which is a weight unit. The pound sterling, on the other hand, is 240 pennies. Okay, so just by definition, the monetary pound, the pound sterling, is 240 pennies. So the pound is divided into 20 shillings of 12 pence each, and so it's 240 pennies in a monetary pound. So what Desan is saying is that the merchant might take a Tower pound and sell them for a mint price of 230 pennies. Now, the mint, according to her, is going to take this pound, this weight pound, and mint it into an amount of money that is a pound plus a little extra, okay? So 240 pennies is a little bit more than a pound sterling. It's 1 pound, 2 pence. So there's 2 extra pence being created just through the magic of sovereignty. Now, this is not the part that's wrong, by the way. I mean, this is fine. The magic of sovereignty. I mean that, yeah. There's sovereignty does its magic and says poof, presto, changeo. We're going to make these extra 2 pennies, and there you go. And now, well, 12 of those pennies is going to be kept for the moneyer and the king. So this is what brassage is the money that the moneyer gets, and seigniorage is the money that the king gets. But in what follows, we could just lump these together and call it seigniorage because it doesn't really matter it in fact is the same thing for the relevant purposes that we're concerned with here, right? So brassage plus seigniorage or seigniorage. So what she's saying is that the merchant is going to bring a pound of silver to the mint and get a little bit less than a pound in return, right? So this is 19 shillings 2 pence. So it's 10 pence short of a pound. Now, her argument for why the merchant might want to do this, right? You might ask, well, why would you want to get less than a pound for a pound? That seems like a bad deal. Her argument for this is 2 things. One, she argues, she asserts, I should say, that it is illegal to use anything other than English money in England. This assertion is simply false. And if you look at the footnotes and you go read the laws that she cites, they say nothing of the sort. Okay, so the laws that she actually cites say something different. They say it is illegal to refuse the king's money. Right? So you aren't allowed to refuse the king's money. That is illegal. That is, well, it is, as the Code of Ethelred said, he'll be punished. The person who does this will be punished as though treason to me, basically. So you can't refuse money, but there is no law against tendering bullion and like from probate documents and stuff. I mean, land transfer documents. I mean, we know people did this. People kept bullying. People used, especially early on in the medieval period. Not so much later for reasons we can talk about in a second. So that's one argument that is based on basically just false assertions. I mean, if you don't believe me, I mean, track the citations, go look. They don't say that. The other argument that she offers is the argument about cash services, and this is basically the idea that small change is valuable, right? That it's I'd rather have 230 pennies than a pound because the pennies are all nicely divided up for me and I can use them more easily in exchanges for low denominations. Okay. So there's the cash services arguments. Now, all of these arguments about why the merchant might want to do this are unnecessary because, in fact, this never happened. The mint price is structurally greater than 240. Okay, so the amount of pennies that the merchant, legal pennies that the merchant will get from selling a pound of silver to the mint is always going to be greater than or equal to 240. Okay, it's never, ever, ever in the entire history of the English money less than 240. And this really matters. And it shows that Dasan misunderstands the institution of the medieval mint in a very fundamental way. And that's what you're going to see by the end of this lecture, which is, it might take me a little while to get you through this. So buckle up. So early on in the system, we're talking like 12th century here, maybe 11th century, 12th century. Basically, the mint price was 240. But if the mint master made you wait, so if he didn't have coins ready to purchase your bullion at spot, if he said, yeah, give me the bullion and come back in 2 weeks, and then he had to pay a premium. So the mint price was either 240 at spot or like 243 in forward. Anyway, so it's early on, it's very close. By the 14th century, which is the period that we're going to be taking our example from, okay, the mint price is closer around it's 288. It varies a little bit, but this is the standard we're going to be looking at is a mint price of 288. And so what this means is that the merchant takes a pound of silver to the mint, and in exchange they would get 288 pennies, which is 1 pound 4 shillings. Okay, so this explains why people don't, by the 14th century, you don't want to use silver bullion as a means of payment, because if you're paying in England, if you're liable in English money, then there's no reason that you would want to pay a pound of bullion when you could go to the mint and get 288 pennies, because then 240 of those pennies is a pound, and then you'd be left with 48 pennies left over. And so if you pay with bullion, you're just leaving this premium of the mint price on the table. And so why would you want to do that? Well, the only time you would do that is if the lines at the mint are too long and you can't wait. And so your counterparty is demanding payment now. So this matters, but it's kind of an advanced topic for thinking about the mint. So we'll gloss over that for the moment. So okay, so this description is extremely misleading, and it's factually false. It's never happened. By analogy, it's a bit like if I were explaining to you how a central bank worked, and I just assumed that the interest rate was negative, and I didn't explain why that would be. Like, this would be an equivalent of a negative interest rate at the mint, and it never happened. I mean that happened today, but this never happened in the actual history of the mint. So okay, so let's look at the mint as it was defined in 1351 by Edward III, who had spent the last decade reforming the coinage in various ways that we won't get into all of it here. But this was the final reform, and this is like a couple years after the plague hits, right? So these are very tumultuous times. Sound familiar? Big monetary reforms in the middle of a pandemic disease. Yeah. So okay, so in 1351, the English monetary system was defined in this way. So we have a tower pound, is 5,400 grains, and that's what the merchant sells to the mint. We have the penny, which is defined as 18 grains, or 300 to the pound, right? So 5,400 divided by 300 equals 18. And 300 pence is 1 pound 5 shillings. And the penny is also defined at the sterling fineness. Now, this is an older value for sterling fineness. It changed, but this value, the Edwards value for sterling was 37/40, or 92.5%. So that's the legal definition of a penny. It's 18 grains of 37/40 fine silver, and it's cut at 300 to the pound, but the mint price is 288 to the pound, or 1 pound 4 shillings. So you'll notice that there's an extra shilling or 12 pence here. That's this, right? The seigniorage and brassage. So that's the profit that that's really brassage, and the seigniorage is taken out in fineness. But anyway, but there's 12 extra pence. So there's 12. So okay. So what are the total profits to the merchant and the king to the moneyer and the king for allowing the merchant to sell bullion to the mint window? Well, first of all, there's 12 extra pence. So the merchant is giving enough silver to make 300, and they're only getting 288. But there's also the difference created by the difference in fineness. Okay, so when we talk about a tower pound of silver, this is before they cut it. Okay, they're assaying silver, not sterling. So, and of course, what medieval people considered to be pure silver is not what modern chemical analysis considers to be pure silver, but they had a notion of pure silver, and that's what they meant. And so there's two different sources of profit for the merchant, for the mint master and the king. One of which is the reduction in the creation of sterling, in which you're going to add lead to the alloy, and this nominal premium, which is created by the fact that the mint price is less than the cut. Okay. Hope you're following. All right. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we have a theoretical silver content of 288 pence. So this is how much silver there should be in a payment of 288 pence according to the standard, and that's 18 grains per penny times sterling fineness. Oops. Times 288 is 4795.2 grains. So if we think about what this means, what that means is that if you take 5,400 grains of silver to the mint, and then you would get 288 pence back. But if you then melted those pence, they would yield silver, and this silver would be less. It would be this amount, 4795.2 grains. Okay, so that is the total. This difference is the total amount of the extra silver that's harvested by the mint as a price for making domestically valued legal money. Okay. Now, so what that ratio gives us is what I'm calling the charge of the coin. Now, this is a concept that was introduced by Stuart Berlin, who's an important figure in numismatics. And what this is, so this number is 5,400 over 4795.2 equals about 1.126. And what this means is that this is the premium on a certain amount of silver for being embodied in domestic coins rather than anything else, including silver coins. Okay, so what that means is that suppose you're in England and you have some Flemish money, you have some groats, and you also have some English money, you have some pennies. These are both silver coins. Adding the gold really complicates it. I was just seeing in a second. Okay, so you have some quantities of silver coins, and suppose that you had the quantities of these silver coins such that there was the same amount of silver in both of the coins. Now, the question is, how much more highly does the English monetary standard value the same amount of silver for being in English coins rather than in foreign coins? Well, the answer is 12.6%. Okay, these English coins get a 12.6% premium because of the fact they're English coins, and we know this, okay, because if you took that silver in the Flemish coins and minted it in order to transform it into English coins, that number is the size. So that's how much that's how much silver you'd lose. You'd have less silver. Okay, so that is the charge of the silver coin, and let's note that this is it's a pure number. It doesn't have any units, so it's a percentage of overvaluation. All the units cancel out when we construct that number. Okay. Right. So to reiterate, right, if I have 5,400 grains of silver, I can swap it for 288 pence. And if I have 288 pence, then I can swap it for 4795.2 grains of silver in the melting pot. I have both. Those are the two options that are being created. Now, okay, so what about gold? Well, it's the same thing for gold. So we'll go through this quickly. The noble is 45 to the pound. So take a tower pound of gold to the mint. They'll mint it into 45 nobles, or 120 grains at a fineness of 23 over 24. So 23 karat gold. The reason that there's 24 carats in purity is because of the Roman solitus, the central gold coin of the Roman system. So there's still legacies of the Roman monetary system that are at play in this system, which is interesting to notice. Okay, and so this noble of 120 grains of 23 karat gold is worth 6 shillings 8 pence, which is a third of a pound, or 80 pence. So if we have 45 nobles, we got 15 pounds of English money, and those 45 nobles weigh a tower pound, right? Now, the mint price for gold is 14 pounds, 10 shillings, 9 pence. This number, so the other number, 288, is more constant. The mint price for gold might be quoted as often as on a daily basis. So I know if we have correspondence of merchants where they're like, go find out what the mint is quoting today for gold. So this probably varied a lot more as they tried to respond to the money market. But this is a reasonable example of right order of magnitude. So this means that if you take a pound of gold and you sell it to the mint, you'll get 14 pounds, 10 shillings, 9 pence, which is the same thing as 3,489 pennies. So what this means is that the price at the mint window of a tower pound of gold is this. And if we take that same money and we mint it, if we swap it for gold in the melting pot, we're going to get this amount of gold. And so the charge of the noble, the amount that it is overvalued in this sense, okay, is 1.077. So of course you can notice that the silver coin is more highly charged than the gold coin. And it's really these two values are what generate the entire rest of the system that we're going to look at. So really, if we understand this, right, and all we're understanding here is the mint price, the standard of weight and fineness, and their legally defined relationship to one another as legal English money, right? That's really all the information we need. And out of this, we can construct the rest of the system of the mint. So to see this, let's think about bimetallic ratios. So on the one hand, there's a nominal ratio, and this is the ratio. This is how things look if you're inside the English monetary system looking in. And what this means is basically that if you have two equal nominal amounts of English money, the silver coins are going to weigh 12 times as much as the gold coins. Okay, so there's a 12-to-1 ratio. And that literally just means a pound sterling in silver weighs 12 times as much as a pound sterling in gold. And this is a nice round number. And what it does is it lets people kind of quickly verify that the coins are of the proper weight, right? You can test them in this way because it's a nice round number. None of the other numbers we're going to see in a second are nice. And this is not what really matters. It does matter a little bit. We'll come back at the ends, but what really is more interesting and what really matters are two other ratios. Okay, so a lot of times in books about the history of the mint, you'll read about the bimetallic ratio. Well, there isn't one bimetallic ratio. In fact, there's a number of them, and it's the spreads between these different ratios that is what really matters. So there's two ratios that we really need to think about. One is the bimetallic ratio from the outside looking in, which is the mint ratio. And the other one is from the inside looking out, which is the melt ratio, right? So the mint ratio is from the outside looking in. I'm outside of England. I think I might want to go to the English mint and sell them bullion so that I can get some English money. So I'm outside looking in. And the mint ratio is going to tell me, well, we'll get to a second. It's going to tell me how much the mint is valuing one metal against the other. But I might also be inside the English monetary system looking out. And in that case, I have English money and I want to go someplace else with it. And now what's going to really concern me is the melt ratio, which is the ratio of what the different coins yield in the melting pot. So suppose I owe somebody in England a debt, and that debt is in pound sterling, and I have gold and silver outside of England. One way that I can pay is by shipping metal to the mint, coining it, and then tendering the coins. So how would I decide whether I want to ship my silver or my gold if I had the option? Well, which one do I want? Well, one relevant piece of information. There's more information that I'd need to know to make a real business decision. But certainly one of the things I would need to know would be the mint ratio. And this ratio is pretty easy to understand. It's just that if you shipped a pound of silver to the mint, you get 288 pence. If you ship a pound of gold to the mint, you get 3,489 pence. And so the mint ratio is the ratio between these two numbers is 12.11. Notice it's a little bit higher than the nominal ratio. Okay, so what that means is that the English mint is valuing gold relative to silver a little more highly at the mint window than it is on the nominal ratio. Okay, so money that has already become English money is related to each other at the nominal ratio, but money that has yet to become English money, the more relevant ratio is the mint ratio, which is a little bit higher. So this means that the mint is favoring gold, which we'll talk about in a second. So now suppose on the contrary, right, that I'm owed a debt in England. I have money to collect in England and I want to remit that money to my home country. Well, would I rather have gold or silver? What, it's just the opposite. I need to know the melt ratio. So if I melted a pound of nominal English money, I would end up with 3,996 grains of silver. And if I melted a pound of English money in gold coins, I would end up with 345 grains of silver. So the ratio is the ratio between these two. It's 11.58. So it's a little bit lower. than the nominal ratio. Significantly lower, I would say. So from another perspective, the English monetary system values gold 11.58 times as highly as silver. So if we ask the question, what is the bimetallic ratio at the mint in England? Well, it's actually a little ambiguous. There's one ratio, that's the legal ratio, the nominal ratio, but there's also a mint ratio and a melt ratio, and they're all different. And as we're going to see, it's the spread between this 11.58 and this 12.11, and the question of where this ratio is in the middle of them, all right, whether it's closer to this or closer to this, that is what we're going to care about. And that's, once we understand that, then we're going to begin to understand why the mint matters. Okay, so let's review. We have a kind of policy snapshot. Got a mint ratio, nominal ratio, melt ratio here. And we have two coins, and each of these coins has a charge. Remember, the charge is the premium that it gets for being a domestic coin rather than a foreign coin. And there's an accounting identity here. This is true by definition, which is that the ratio between this number and this number is identical to the ratio between those two numbers. And if you kind of play with it, you'll see why that's the case. Okay, so now that we have these numbers, we can clarify something that really confused me a lot before I figured this stuff out when I was reading about the history of money, and one of the interesting things is whether or not coins are over or undervalued, good money, bad money. All these things are very interesting. You can read about it in my dissertation. But the problem is that the way that these terms are used in a lot of the literature is kind of ambiguous, and there's a few different things that might be meant by it. And so understanding this set of numbers is going to help us understand the different things that might be meant by this. So for example, before I understood this, I might have thought that to say that the mint favors gold is the same as saying that the mint that gold is overvalued, because if it's favoring gold, then it wants you to use that as money. You're more inclined to use gold as money the more of a nominal premium you get. And so kind of this basic thing that it's bad money that circulates and good money is hoarded, and that's what I'm trying to understand. But as this analysis shows, it's actually possible for the mint to favor gold, but for gold to still be undervalued on a different axis. And this is so there's a few different axes here, and if we're trying to make sense of historical data, we need to not confuse these things. This I take to be one of my major contributions to the scholarship on the history of bimetallism. Okay, so let's make a couple of observations. So first is the fact that the charge on a silver coin is higher than the charge on the gold coin. So the silver coin is more highly charged. So it's overvalued in that sense. But there's also the fact that the English monetary system values gold against silver more highly at the mint window than in the melting pot. So gold is worth more relative to silver at the mint window, and in the melting pot it's worth less. And there's a gradient kind of between these things, and the nominal ratios in the middle someplace. And that's kind of the opposite, right? It's actually the coin that is less charged that is more favored, and that's interesting. So those are different things. Okay, so the English monetary system overvalues silver more heavily relative to gold. The silver coin has a higher charge, but at the same time, it favors gold relative to silver at the mint window by offering a premium to the seller of gold against the premium of the seller of silver. So in a more intuitive way to put this is that the English monetary system puts a premium on gold money for being English gold, but at the same time, it puts a premium on silver money for being English silver, right? So the premium that silver gets for being English silver is one thing, and the premium that English gold gets for being gold is another thing, and these things are both true, and it's a little mind warping to get your head around at first. And this is an accounting identity, as we saw above. So the consequence of this is that the legal valuation of coin money puts a premium on money along two different axes. Along one axis, it values domestic coins at a premium to foreign coins, and along another axis, it values coins in one metal more highly than coins in the other metal. There's an accounting identity, et cetera, and so forth. So to make it even simpler, the English Mint's policy stance is encouraging merchants to sell gold rather than silver to the window because it gives them a little premium. Okay, and discouraging them from melting silver rather than gold. Why? Well, because when you melt silver, the silver coin is more highly charged. So that nominal premium that it gets for being English silver disappears. Poof, goes up in smoke because you melted it. And now it no longer has the king's face on it. And so it's no longer legal English money. And that all just disappears. Okay. So you're paying that penalty when you melt silver. And it's bigger for silver than for gold. So the English Mint is encouraging you to sell gold to the window relative to silver. And it's discouraging you from melting silver relative to gold. So here, to reiterate, here's our numbers, and now maybe you can see some more meaning in them. Okay, new question. Okay, but what is the significance of the number 1.046, right? And why can't the charges of the two coins be equal to one another? Wouldn't that make it simpler? And then this number would be 1. Well, this is where things get really interesting, because this number, this spread of size 4.6%, okay, is the size of the spread within which that's what I'm going to call the sweet. That's the size of the sweet spot of the bimetallic mint, where it's operating at its most efficient. That's where you want to be. When you move out of the sweet spot, then you have problems, and well, that's what my theory shows you. Okay, so to see this, so let's make up some words, and let's say, to distinguish these ambiguous concepts. And so let's say that in the 1351 system, the silver penny is being protected by the mint, okay? Because protected, you pay a penalty when you melt it, because all of that magic premium, legal premium, goes up in smoke, while the gold noble is being favored by the mint, so you're being encouraged to mint it. So one coin's protected, the other coin's favored. What this means is that relative to the nominal ratio between the two English coins, I just said this, you're enticed to mint it, and you're discouraged from melting it. So what this means is that the English mint is encouraging people to both mint and melt the gold coin relative to silver, right? So what the mint really wants you to do, if you're a foreign merchant, is to leave the silver alone. They want you, they're encouraging you through this policy. Whenever you want to send money to England, they'd rather you send gold coins and mint those, and because they're giving you a premium on it, and whenever you take coins out of the country, which they don't really want you to do at all, but if you're going to do it, they would rather you take out the gold coin. That's what the mint says, right? So we can stylize this fact, and this is not a trade anybody would do, but this is the limit case, and everything interesting takes place before the limit case. But if you took gold to the mint and then minted it into coins and then immediately melted down those coins, how much would you pay for the privilege of doing this trade? Well, that's the size of the spread, and this spread is the total size of the boundaries within which, as we'll see, the market kind of moves. So basically the answer is, right, that if you made the charge on the two coins the same and made this number 1, well, then there wouldn't be any sweet spot. The sweet spot would be 0, and the mint would be under pressure immediately, right? So it's the fact that there's a difference, there's an asymmetry between the different overvaluations of the two coins that is what makes this spread between the mint point and the melt point. That's what makes those ratios different from the nominal ratio, and it's inside that band of variation that the system works best. That's where you want to be if you're managing the mint. Okay, and so basically, if the market moves beyond that band of variation, if it tests the the policy spread, well, either the mint is going to pay a price to defend the spread, or the market's going to break. And this happens in the 1290s and the 1570s, and that's why kings reform the money. The money is to try to move the standard in order to keep the market from breaking the mint. Okay, so the mint is definitely not all powerful. It has a breaking point, and before the breaking points, it has stress points, and kind of contrary to so the old gold bug story, right, is that the reason that kings debase money is because they're greedy and they want to, and that's, it's not that they never do that, but actually with notable exceptions under Henry Tudor and some other people, the revenue from the mints is actually kind of small change in the king's overall budget, and it's usually not really worth it to kings to antagonize the subjects. Really fucking hate it when the king messes with the money, and so you have to really be desperate to want to raise revenues through debasement. Usually debasements are what John Monroe calls defensive debasements. And they're trying to change the mint stance, the mint policy stance, in order to move the sweet spot, to move the boundary conditions, in order to fix the market. Okay, which is, of course, I mean, that's what the Fed does when it changes policy rates. I mean, is the plumbing of the system is constructed differently, but there's some important similarities. Okay, so in order to see why this is so, we need to introduce the foreign sector into our model. So first of all, there's no such thing as an equilibrium in international bullion markets. I mean, that doesn't exist. People talk about this, but it doesn't exist. What there are just various markets where you can, there's not a single equilibrium price. Okay, there's a bid-ask spread. So there's a price for silver and gold, and a price for gold and silver, and there's a spread between them. This is how markets work. There's spreads, not prices. You can read the first chapter of my dissertation, and I'll explain why that is. So there's markets, and there's bids for these metals, and these bids can be established in a variety of different ways, right? I mean, they could, there's manual exchange of coins. So just the trading, foreign coins circulate beyond political jurisdictions. We're not going to get into this, but actually, you will read many authors assert that foreign coins circulate only at their bullion values, right? So yeah, there's foreign coins, but they're like they're purely bullion value. That's not true, actually. Rulers had a hard time preventing foreign coins from outside their kingdom from circulating in their own domains at a premium to their bullion content. It's an advanced topic. We're not going to get to it in this video, but it follows from what we're talking about here. So maybe you can figure it out yourself. So it could be that you go to the market, and okay, so you're in Flanders, and well, there's a guy, and he's got some English nobles, and you say, what's the price? And he quotes you a price. Well, he quotes you a price, and that price is in Flemish money. Now, Flemish money refers to groats. These well, they're much more debased coins than the English ones, but the silver content in them certainly matters. And so that act of quoting a price for the English florins in domestic Flemish money defines it's a bid for, it's an asking price for gold in terms of silver, right? Okay, so the question we want to ask is, at what point could the silver bid for gold or the gold bid for silver in a foreign market reach a point at which it would break the mint and require a readjustment of the standard if the mint's going to go on doing bimetallism? Well, the answer is that it would be possible if the foreign bid reached a point that the mint could be arbitraged. In other words, the merchant could melt English coins of one metal, ship them abroad, sell the bullion for the other metal, ship that metal back, and make a profit. Okay, so here, notice I'm ignoring shipping and insurance costs. If you do an empirical study, you need to think about this, but it adds complexity without much interest. So I'm pretending this is free, but of course it's not in the real world. So that is part of the spread too in reality. So So there's two such breaking points, one for each metal, and they can be derived from the policy snapshot we already have. So they're given by this formula: mint ratio over silver charge equals melt ratio over gold charge equals silver breaking point. I'm gonna prove it by showing you this example. But what this says is that if the silver breaking point is 10.75, so that's a gold to silver ratio. So that means 10 units of gold per 10.75 units of silver per unit of gold. And if there exists a foreign market at which this bid is being made or asked or whatever, depends on which way you think is up. What that means is that silver is so valuable abroad that the mint can be arbitraged by melting silver down and exporting it from England. So suppose, in here we're going to add another counterfactual, right? So suppose it were free to make change within the English monetary economy, or that there existed a window at which nobles could be swapped for pennies at nominal par. Right, so 80 pennies is worth one noble. Suppose there were just a friendly state official whose job it was to trade you a noble for 80 pennies or 80 pennies for a noble anytime you liked. This did not exist. There was a window, but it charged a price. It's half a pence one way, and anyway, this matters. There's statutes about it. It's part of the spread, but we're going to assume it away for purposes of illustrating the basic idea that I'm trying to get across. Right. So let's assume this free to make change. So suppose you had 10 pounds worth of English pennies, 2,400 pence. Melt them down, you get this much silver, 39,960. If I could take those abroad and swap them for gold at 10.75 to 1, then I could get 17.2 grains of gold, which is about 6.688 of a tower pound. And if I took these back to the mint and sold them for the mint price, I would get about 2,400 pence. If you run these numbers, there's rounding errors because this is not an exact number, but you get this is an approximation, right? Okay, so basically that's the point at which you could for free just continually swap this money back and forth. And so if the price went any further beyond that, right? So if this number drops, that means silver is getting more expensive. So if this number went below 10.75, all of a sudden, eventually it's an arbitrage profit, and once it gets enough to justify your risk and your cost of capital and all that kind of stuff, then you could arbitrage the mint. So that's the point, right? Beyond that point, you would no longer have a bimetallic mint because the silver would leave the country as soon as it was minted, right? So that nobody would want to mint silver. Everybody would be trying to take English silver out of the country, and you would transition to a monometallic currency. Something like this probably happened at the end of the Roman Empire, but that's another topic. Okay, and similarly, there's a gold breaking point. This is just the inverse of this other one. It's 1304. That's I do the numerics. I show you. That's the arbitrage point. Okay, so now we have two sets of numbers. So there's these coins and their charges and the spread. And we also have these. So we have a nominal ratio in the middle. We have this inside spread, the spread between the mint ratio and the melt ratio. And we also have an outside spread, the spread between the gold breaking point and the silver breaking point. Okay, so what? So there's a spread on international markets between gold and silver, not a price, a spread. When the spread is within the inside spread, so when the foreign spread is inside here, you're kind of in the sweet spot. This is the spot where there's not really any temptation for merchants to try to make a profit through specifically monetary operations, right? This is the point at which dealing in money is not really profitable in itself, and the merchants are just trying to use the money in order to conduct trade in goods, which is what you want them to be doing, right? Because you, as the ruler, as the policymaker of the mint, you don't like it when the merchants are making profits on just dealing in money because, well, as we're going to see, they are drinking your milkshake. You don't like that. So this in the middle here is kind of the nice area. That's when it's working good. Now, so you'll notice that here between the melt ratio and the silver breaking point, there's a spread, and the size of both of these spreads, and I said something wrong in my dissertation that I found as I was compiling this. I made an arithmetical mistake. It doesn't affect any of the conclusions, but what I said was slightly wrong. So I feel very bad about this. But the size of these spreads between the gold breaking point and the mint ratio, between the melt ratio and the silver breaking point is actually, this is equal to the charge on the gold coin. It's 7.7%, which is the charge. Whereas the spread between this and this, and between silver and the mint, or between gold and the melt, is the size of the charge on the silver coin. So as you can see, I mean, this is all an expansion of an accounting identity that is created through the first set of numbers that we analyzed. But what it does is to create a pair of nested spreads. That's pretty fucking cool, isn't it? Okay, so when the system, as I said, when the system is at the breaking point, it breaks. So we don't really care about that. What we care about is what happens as it's moving towards the breaking point, as it approaches the breaking point out of the sweet spot. And I'm going to call that the stress zone. And that's when merchants are going to be kind of tempted to replace what would otherwise be trafficking goods with trafficking money instead. Okay, so one of the things that the English Parliament is always complaining about is that foreign merchants come to England and they sell stuff and they get money, and then they don't want to spend the English money on English goods to export. They just want to take the English money. Okay, so part of the reason that they want to do that is because the system is in the stress zone here, and so merchants are going to be more wanting to deal in money, to have money be at least one leg of a trade circuit instead of goods, right? You could have a trade circuit that was purely goods, but if one leg of it becomes money, well, now you have an asymmetry in your graph, and well, that means you have a clearinghouse drain, which is what the people that we unfairly malign as mercantilists were worried about. Okay, so one last thing I'm going to observe, and this is a kind of technical point, but I think it's interesting, and this is what I said that was slightly, I'm fixing what I said that was slightly wrong in dissertation and saying it in a more precise way. So there's two stress zones, and they're not exactly symmetrical. And this is because, to return to something I said earlier, right, the English mint is favoring gold over silver regardless of which of these metals is over or undervalued relative to the outside. Okay, so this policy snapshot here has nothing whatsoever to do with whatever the price or whatever the spread between gold and silver is on other markets. Okay, it's purely defined by the coins and the mint price. Unless the mint changes one of the coins, it's always going to be favoring gold, in the sense, again, that it values gold more highly at the mint window than it does in the melting pot. And so the consequence of this, right, is that the market externally could move in either direction, right? It could be that silver is becoming more expensive and we move down here, or it could be that gold is becoming more expensive and we move up here. But regardless of which side we're on, okay, gold is still favored in sort of in its own terms at the English mint. So this creates an asymmetry. So there's actually a difference. What this means is that the arbitrager would rather mint silver and melt gold than mint gold and melt silver, right? The arbitrager would actually rather the system be in the gold breaking point where gold is being exported, because that way he's minting gold and melting silver. I think I'm getting it backwards. I think it's the other way around. So would rather mint silver and melt gold than mint gold and melt silver. So the point is that that when the arbitrager is melting silver, they're taking a bigger haircut than when they melt gold. Okay, so the arbitrager doesn't really want to melt silver because the silver coin is more highly charged, and it's that charge that disappears when you melt it. And so you don't really want to be melting. You don't want to be melting silver. You want to be melting gold. And so So the point is that, so this difference, right, the spread between 12 and 11.58 is bigger than the spread between 12.11 and 12. Okay, so this spread between these two numbers is the incentive to mint gold, while this spread is the disincentive to melt silver. Okay, and because this is bigger, there's a bigger disincentive for melting silver than there is for minting gold. So the point here is that when the system is in the silver breaking point, okay, there's a bigger incentive to mint new gold coins than there is in the converse case when you're in the gold breaking point, and the incentive to mint new silver coins is smaller because the mint is still favoring gold. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, this is a very arcane point, but I actually think it's pretty important to understanding some of the phenomena. Okay, so for example, in the 16th century during the Tudor period, there's a lot of old worn silver that's circulating, and the point here is that the system is actually in the gold breaking point, but the incentive to mint new silver coins is not strong enough. So you get silver circulating because gold is being hoarded, but it's not being minted. So there's so you're going to have more intense minting activity of one of the metals in one of the stress zones versus the other. Okay, so there's an asymmetry. In one of the stress zones, there's magnitudes that are adding together, and in the other stress zone, they're attenuating one another, and that's an interesting asymmetry. Okay, so that's the most technical point that I wanted to make about this. Okay, so now that we've settled that, now we have basically a complete picture of the bimetallic mint's policy stance, and all of this can be derived as long as we know the standard of weight, the fineness of the coins, their nominal equivalents, and the mint price of each metal. So how does this relate to the market in bills, which is what we talked about last time? So remember that we saw last time that the market in bills can only exist as long as there are exchangers per arte who make the market. These are what we would now think of as dealers. Okay, this is the dealer market. So these are specialized bankers who maintain offices where other merchants who wish to make international remittances can purchase bills. In order to be open for business, the exchange bankers have to be always ready to quote a price in present money for an absent money on demand, right? So there's an office in Antwerp, and somebody walks into the office and say, hey, I got Flemish money. I want to buy pound sterling in London. What's your price? And if you don't quote a price, then you're not in business. And so what are you doing? You're just losing money on your office. Okay, so and similarly, in London, they're standing ready to buy bills drawn on Antwerp in groats. So as we saw last time, the exchange makers do this business because there is a spread between these two prices, one of which is quoted movable and the other which is quoted certain. So this difference maps onto a hierarchy of exchange centers in the banking network. Okay, this is the asymmetry. Saw somebody on Twitter today who's doing really cool empirical work about this. He's got these pretty fractal pictures of all of the structure of the credit system, and so that's, you could use those same theoretical tools. The data is harder, but you could think about the early modern exchange banking network in this way, right? So there's a hierarchy, and the city that is higher up the hierarchy quotes certain to the city that is lower down the hierarchy. So Antwerp is higher up, and it quotes certain to London, which means that the price of a bill drawn on Antwerp from London is fixed. By contrast, London quotes movable to Antwerp, which means that you have to actually be on the exchange in Antwerp in order to know what is the current price of a bill drawn on London in sterling as expressed in the local money. Okay, we went over all of this last time, so if you're confused by what I'm saying, watch that video. So there's an asymmetry in the sense that Antwerp always knows something that London doesn't. Okay, Antwerp is there's an information asymmetry in that if you're in London, so if your city quotes movable because it's lower down the hierarchy, then you don't know what the price of your own money is abroad on the exchange when you're at home. In order to know that, you need to communicate with the exchange abroad to find out what the current price is. Because the other price doesn't float; it's fixed. I mean, it's changed. It's published periodically in the content. So this is why, for example, Thomas Gresham, the man who gave his name somewhat incorrectly. It's not really his law, but Gresham's law, right? Who is Elizabeth's financial officer, who's doing all this business for. He has to go to Antwerp because he's trying to sell bills drawn on London in order to get money on the continent for Elizabeth to pay people on the continent for various things, for diplomatic payments or mercenaries or whatever you have to. These rulers are always bribing each other to switch sides and stuff like that. So they need to raise money to do that. And Tommy Gresham is your man. So what we saw last time was that the exchange bankers make their profit and thus stand ready to buy bills in any direction demanded because of the fact that the ratio between English money and Flemish money is lower when quoted certain than it is when quoted movable. If, in other words, price of X pounds sterling, or the price is X pounds of sterling, okay, 1 pound of sterling, for a bill drawn in London on Flanders for Z groats, then the price quoted in Flanders for a bill drawn on London for X pounds sterling must be Z minus Y groats. Okay, so there's this Y, which is well, that's why everybody in London is always annoyed at Antwerp, because Antwerp is devaluing their money. They're saying that, how dare those foreigners say that our money isn't worth what we think it should be? Well, because they're pricing it on the exchange, and there's this structural spread. There's this Y term that size of the value of Y is known on the exchange in Antwerp. You have to be there in the market, but it has to be non-zero, or else the market and bills wouldn't exist. There'd be a liquidity crisis. So given that the market exists, this Y, the size of the spread, must be non-zero. We don't know exactly how big it is, but we know that it's non-zero because as it approached zero, okay, the exchange bankers would simply withdraw their capital from the exchange business, because as it approaches zero, there's no profit to be made. So why would you be an exchange banker? You should do something else with your life. Okay, so the exchange bankers are competing with one another to quote the smallest possible spread that will still make it worth their while to tie up their capital and making the market in bills. And this market is really about competition between exchange bankers to make the rechange. So there's going to be some cities in which money is scarce, or is it abundant? I think it's scarce. Always, it's hard to remember which way is up. But there's one of I think it's scarce money when basically no, it must be abundant money. So in the city where money is abundant, the exchange bankers, so they need, as we saw last time, right? They need to net out their book, because their correspondent bankers have expanded their balance sheet, and in order to make the profit complete, they need to net it back out. And so they're competing in the city where money is abundant. In other words, all of the exchange bankers are trying to buy bills because they all need to complete a rechange in a certain direction. And that's the point at which the market has to kind of offer the forced drawers, the drawers who are not dealers but are on the other side of the trade. Okay, it has to offer them a kind of premium in order to complete the rechange. And so the exchange bankers are competing with each other for the business of drawers in cities where money is abundant. Yeah, and that's what determines the market price. But the real question is why is there a spread in the first place? Okay, why are the exchange bankers able to make this profit? Well, one possible answer, and I think this is an answer you would get from kind of more mainstream economic historians who don't have a theory of liquidity, is that the spread is generated purely out of the cost of shipping and insurance on bullion, right? So the idea here, what services the exchange bankers offer? Well, because it's risky and the pain in the ass to ship your gold and silver, and so they do it with bills, and this lowers transaction costs. Really is not about that. This does matter, and if we're going to do empirical study, we need to estimate it and put it into the model, but it's not really. It's kind of a little extra value added thing. It's not the real source of the spread. Okay, the real source of the spread that is harvested as profit by exchange bankers after they split a little bit of this profit off to the drawers who are in demand in the abundant city, is created by the two opposing mints and their policy stances. Okay, so here's one mint. I'm not going to give you the other mint because actually I I would be making up numbers completely out of my ass for the Flanders mint. I would like to get real numbers. So I'm not quite, I'll have to further research is needed. Subscribe to my Patreon. So here's the English mint, and the Flemish mint has another a set of numbers that are like these, but different. Okay, the Flemish mint has the same thing. It's minting a silver coin and a gold coin, and each of them has a charge. And when we sort of feed this accounting identity back into itself a couple times, we generate this set of spreads. So as I said last time, so we're now finally in a position to see what I said last time, which is that the profit of the exchange bankers is really a kind of seigniorage arbitrage. And we'll see this by supposing that we're a merchant in Antwerp who imports goods from England. Okay, so I owe money to somebody in England. And what I really care about at the end of the day is my wealth as expressed in Flemish money, because that's how I measure my success. That's how if I'm going to buy my mansion in town, I need Flemish money in order to do that. And that's what I really care about. So, but the money that I'm going to pay to the exporter who exported me the goods that I imported in England, that is in pounds sterling, in English money. So there's a difference. So I owe a debt to my counterparty in England, and it's pound sterling. And I got some Flemish money. I have some silver coins, groats. I've got some gold coins. We'll call them florins. There might be écus. There's different gold coins. Doesn't really matter. So these Flemish coins, like English coins, are really exotic options, as we would now say. Okay, they have an option to either be spent at nominal value in legal jurisdiction, or to be melted down, sold to a foreign mint window. Okay, so part of the problem with certain descriptions of the mint is that they don't take into account the fact that the mint is competing with other mints. Okay, so what they want you to bring to the mint to melt down is not necessarily bullion, but foreign coins, which they're going to assay as bullion, and that's going to, well, they're going to get to charge seigniorage on it, right? So because if I'm the king, I don't really like it if my subjects are using foreign money, because that means my rival got the seigniorage to supply that money supply instead of me, and I don't like that. So I would like you to melt down your Flemish coins at the English mint, where I'm going to say, what am I going to say? Well, I'm going to say, well, my cousin, the Duke of Flanders, is a very naughty duke, and he debased his money a lot. Isn't that awful? So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to accept, this premium that he says should be on the coins. I'm just going to treat them as though they were metal, and we're going to test them. And so I'll give you, I'm not going to treat those coins as metal, because that rascal, the Duke of Flanders, minted them. Instead, I'm going to treat them as silver, and then you can get some good English money, and wouldn't you like that much better? That's what the mint is saying. Okay, so we need to understand that there's two mints and they're opposing each other, and that's really where the spread is created. So again, I'm a Flemish merchant. I want to accumulate money so that I can buy a cool pad in town. I need Flemish money to do that, but I owe English money to my counterparty who's selling me the wool that I need in order to get rich. So how am I going to pay him? Well, one option is I can do what the English mint wants me to do, which is that I can ship gold or silver coins to the English mint and get English money. Now, okay, well, my second option is that I can, as it happens, I need English money, and there's English money circulating in Flanders in the form of English coins. Okay, English money circulated in foreign jurisdictions, and in fact, it was pretty popular because it was pretty good money. People like to be paid in English coins, and in kind of a similar way that they might like to be paid in dollars. In certain economies around the globe today. So I could, if I wanted to pay my counterparty in England, I could buy some of these coins just on the open market, where they would circulate at a market price. And that happens. You can do that. The other option is purchase bill of exchange, right? The other option is that I draw a bill of exchange on my counterparty in England, right? So my counterparty in England owes me money. I draw up a letter that says, "Hey, buddy, remember that oh, I switched the importer. No, I have to. I'm paying him. Well, let's sorry, I went the wrong way. So sorry, it's not that he's an importer. It's that you sold. Let's suppose you sold some money in England. It would go the other way, but so I drop a letter and I say, "Hey, remember that stuff I sold you, right? I would like you to give whoever brings you this bill, pay them that money, and I'll count that as payment for my debt, right?" Yeah, gosh, I missed out my example, but I hope you see. So the other way is that I can do a bill, and it's either going to be, well, I might have to. So if I want to pay him, and so if I want to pay my counterparty in London, then it's my counterparty that draws up a bill on me. Okay, so I imported some goods from England, and I need to pay him, and so I'm gonna instruct him to draw a bill on me. So he's gonna write a bill that says, "Hey, remember that wool that I sold you? I need to get paid for it. So I'm gonna draw a bill on you," and he's gonna sell that bill to the banker, to the banker in London, who's then gonna send it to the banker in Flanders, and is gonna present it to me, and then I'm gonna pay it. Okay, so this is one actually really confusing thing that it's easy to get messed up, and I've fallen into this trap that I was scolding somebody for the other day. It's really difficult, right? So it flows the opposite. The letter flows the opposite direction from how you think it flows, right? So I don't send the letter in order to pay somebody. Okay, bill of exchange is not a money order. I send the bill in order to get paid. Right. So here this should say, instead of they can purchase a bill drawn on London, they instruct their counterparty to purchase a bill drawn on Flanders. Okay, so I messed it up. I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to do this whole video again. All right. So okay. So the reason that understanding the mint's policy stance is important is that it shows why there would exist a spread that could be harvested by the exchange bankers, even if the cost of shipping coins and bullion were free and riskless. Okay, so we don't need the costs of freight in order to explain why the exchange bankers can do their business. And the reason we don't need this, right, is because there is a spread. So what's gonna happen if instead of going to the money market in either of these ways, okay, what if instead they're going to do this thing and ship gold or silver Flemish coins to the English mint? What's going to happen? Well, the second and third options are floating market prices. So we'd have to study them if we wanted to know about it. But the first option, the price of doing this, is not a floating market price. It is a policy price, okay? And this policy price is defined by the stances of the two mints combined. So if I'm in Flanders and I need to send money to England, then that's going to cost me something. And what is that cost? Well, if I take my Flemish coins and melt them, I've destroyed the nominal premium that they get for being Flemish coins. So I've lost an amount of nominal Flemish money. Okay. Then I send them to the English mint and I have them assayed as bullion. And then the English mint takes some silver out of them in the form of seigniorage. And so I lose that also. Okay. So I've both destroyed a nominal value that the Flemish money had as legal money, and I've lost some silver by giving it to the English mint. Okay, so the total price of this outside option for just shipping coins and selling them to the English mint, okay, is actually a vector of two incommensurable, or not, they're commensurable, but they're not yet commensurate. Okay, two incommensurate values, one of which is a nominal value in Flemish money, and the other which is an intrinsic value just in terms of lost silver. Now, these two values are going to get commensurated in the exchange market, and once the transaction goes back around the other way, this would be a little bit complicated. So, but the point is, okay, what is the exchange banker really doing? What is their business? Well, they're not just obviating or making unnecessary the need to pay shipping and insurance on the shipping of specie. Okay, that's not all they're doing. The other thing that they're doing is they're saving the Flemish coins from being melted down, and they're saving the silver from being lost to the English mint. Okay, so they're cutting both of the mints out in a certain kind of way, right? So the exchange banker's like, so you go to the exchange banker, right? And you're like, hey man, like I need to pay this guy in England, and I have these Flemish coins, and I could ship these coins to England, and then I would lose the legal value of the Flemish money, and I'd lose some silver at the English mint. Like, can you help me out? And the banker says, yeah, no problem. Look, I know somebody who has English money. That's what you need. And I can find somebody who's going to want these Flemish coins as Flemish coins. And so don't melt them down. All you're doing when you do that is you're giving money to the Duke of Flanders, and you're giving silver to the King of England, and we don't want to give either of these guys the money if we don't have to. So I'm going to take care of that for you, right? And I'm gonna complete the market. I'm gonna do the dealer thing. And we talked about this last time, right? So I'm gonna find the other side of both of these transactions, and I'm going to assume onto my own balance sheet and the balance sheet of my counterparty kind of this risk of the transaction until it can be closed out, and then I'm going to take a profit by doing that. Okay, but the ultimate source of the profit is defined by this difference between the overvaluation of the coin on each side of the mint, and to make things even worse, there's two coins, right? So first the merchant is going to decide, well, would I rather export gold Flemish coins or silver Flemish coins? And so really, for any given direction, there's going to be a best option depending on what the different mint stances are, and then between and each of those, whichever coin is more attractive to ship to the other country, is going to make one side of the spread, and then the other side will be the reciprocal thing, and the size of the spread in which this Y term from the exchange bankers, right, that's the size of their premium, is bounded by that, right? Because at the moment that the exchange banker says, yeah, I can do that, but I'm going to charge you more than the mint would, well, now our merchant's not going to do that anymore. He says, well, thanks, but no thanks. I'm just going to ship the coins myself because it's actually going to cost less, right? So the merchant banker has to be giving him a better deal by basically preventing this nominal premium that would have otherwise been destroyed from being lost to the inside of the commercial network. Okay, so the exchange banker is the service that he's rendering to the other merchants is really a service against the different rulers, and it's one that prevents the destruction of nominal values and the loss of intrinsic metal content that would have otherwise been required by the melting of coins at the mint window. Okay, and the total size of this spread, and thus the total amount of profit that's able to be harvested, is defined by the policy window. And now the problem is what happens when the market moves against the window, and now you have a metal draining out of the country, and the exchange bankers don't want to make the market anymore. Okay, so if the exchange bankers get out of the market, as they did in the 1570s for reasons that were not, it has to do with Philip and American treasure and that kind of stuff. You can read about it in my dissertation. But if they get out of the market, then there's no longer going to be this international credit market, and all of a sudden you're going to have to do all of these international remittances in specie. Okay, that's what happened in the 1570s. Boyer and Zambo write about it. But this, what I've just tried to explain to you, and I know is it's not really that complicated, but it really is. I find difficult to really wrap my head around. So I hope my explanation that I gave you made some kind of sense. But this is necessary to understand in order to understand the relationship between sovereign power in the monetary system and private monetary actors like the exchange bankers. And what's interesting is that basically after the 1570s, when the money market kind of collapses because Philip II forces it into this structural asymmetry, and the dealers can't finish the circuit. What happens is that all of the mints basically try to get rid of seniors. They try to close the spread back down because there's this market that used to exist in the spread, and the spreads were really created and opened in response to the market. The market no longer exists, and so there's a period of European monetary policy from the 1570s kind of to the beginning of the 17th century, when the mints are really trying to squeeze the spread as small as possible in order to pursue kind of this identity between the nominal and intrinsic value of the coin. That is kind of this ideological fixation. Okay. Okay, so I think I've explained everything. There's a lot more to be done on this. I don't understand it all. I think I'm correct about what I've just told you, and I think that this is a contribution that I've made to the scholarship. I'm not aware of anybody who's quite explained this relationship in quite the same way. Boyers and Bo hint at it, but I think I've elaborated on what they say a little bit. But I think what is important, right, is that you can now see why the medieval mint is not that different from a modern central bank. Okay, because its most fundamental business is about the quotation of policy spreads, and the market moves inside the spread, and the point of changing the spread by debasing the coins or changing the standard in any kind of way is a response to what happens when the market moves against the policy window, and then the institution has to decide what to do, right? So as I kind of put it earlier, I think I skipped over this, but there's two money markets, right? There's a market in coins, foreign coins, and there's a market in bills, and these markets are floating in a spread. These are money markets, but the spread within which they're floating is created by two or more monetary institutions, the mints in each of the relevant countries. Okay, so this gets way more complicated because in reality, the exchange network is not just symmetric, it's not just bilateral. Okay, the exchange transaction can complete itself by traveling any way through a network and getting back to its origin point. So this is why studying the structure of money markets is a topic in graph theory, which I was very excited that somebody else on Twitter understood this today. So there's some people who are better at numbers than I am who are already working on this. Okay, that is my explanation of the mint policy and its relation to credit markets. I hope you find that interesting and stimulating. I certainly do. And if you like it, please throw me some money. I don't have a job. This is what I'm making videos. So you can subscribe at patreon.com/ColinDrum, and you can subscribe. You can see it. There's a bunch of I do these classes, and you can watch the recordings of it. There's going to be more content coming. So that's my spiel. Okay, thanks for listening.